was Other Planets by the Infinite Brothers, and we have Cody Sparks here right now, who is a member of the Infinite Brothers. Welcome to Bring Me to Life Radio.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, definitely. And so I guess let's start off the interview by introducing yourself and the kind of music that you make.
Sure. My name is Cody Sparks. I work with a lot of ambient music and kind of downtempo music. And I've been recently involved with Infinite Brothers, which is a kind of a collaboration project with two other producers, Stratosphere and The Adaptive. And kind of the same thing, just a lot of downtempo, easy listening, chill out music. It's always kind of been my forte, is just stuff that's like relaxing, and in a way could also be, relevant like on a dance floor, but you get a little bit of both.
Definitely. I really enjoy it, and I think everybody else does as well. Do you have any influences or any other musicians that you might be able to kind of, say maybe influence your music, or maybe your music kind of sounds similar to anything else?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, there's so many that we could think of, speaking in, like in Infinite Brothers terms, but also, I mean, in my terms, like people like Random Rab. I've listened to a lot of his music, and it's really kind of changed the way that I've looked at songwriting. Project that I've really loved for quite a long time is like Boards of Canada. That kind of music has always really appealed to me. Very dreamy, kind of slow beats and fun little samples and stuff. I've been all over with my music writing, because maybe 3 or 4 years ago, the music that I was writing was more like hip hop instrumentals and like kind of taking samples from records and stuff, and it's kind of turned into like I've got influences from kind of like side chill artists. Hard to really name a specific one, but just all around that kind of music, and I've dived more into digital production, and so that's where I'm at right now with that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And how did you first start getting into music? Was it always a part of your life, or did something happen to kind of inspire that?
Well, when I was young, I don't really even remember this, but my mother told me that I was always tapping on things as a kid. I was just always finding something to like tap on. My fingers were always going crazy, and I never really learned any kind of piano or anything like that, but I did learn percussion from, the time I was like maybe 10 years old to 13 years old. And then I stopped doing that because it was all, in school. And at that age, I was just, had no idea really what I wanted to do. But the knowledge from learning all that stuff, and just also just having a natural, I guess, feel for rhythm and beats and stuff like that. It just kind of carried on. And I want to say, this was like a senior in high school in like 2011, and I was kind of starting to mess around with synthesizers and stuff. And the way I was recording back then was just, it's so funny to look at now, because I think, gosh, what was I doing? But it kind of I was definitely into hardware a lot, like keyboards and drum machines and stuff. And then I got more into digital production within the last 4 years or so.
And with that, you're talking about like doing stuff on Ableton?
I'm working with Native Instruments Machine right now, but like an equivalent. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And how did you learn about digital production?
With Machine, I mean, I really just kind of picked it up because the way that I was working with my synthesizers and drum machines that I had, they were from Korg. It was kind of almost like I already knew how to use a program like that. I just needed to get used to, the software. And I think when I just purchased, the hardware and the software together, and I opened it up, it kind of just immediately made sense. It was like, wow, this is like extremely helpful. Whereas before I was using probably Audacity and trying to record multi-track, things with some not so good microphone and.
But
yeah.
you definitely got to start somewhere there. I think if you feel like you need to make music, it's important to use whatever you got.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's what I did, back then. Something I, think about a lot is when I was that age, and working with that kind of stuff, live shows were a lot more intensive for me because I really had to, it was like, playing with a full band because I had to remember parts to, trigger on different drum machines and had to make sure that they were the right tempo and BPM. And now, I don't want to say it's, it's not as much work, but with, a laptop, it's just very simplified, as opposed to working with lots of drum machines. But it translated really well when I got into it with digital production.
Definitely technology is something that will continue to evolve and something that I think helps to ease our lives as humans and be able to, say people can get on their phone and look for answers and do research wherever they want and all that stuff. So I think technology can be used for good things and definitely music.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because when you say the phone, there's I forget what it was I saw recently. Some large, pretty popular track. It was probably like a rap track. Was produced almost entirely on a phone, and that's basically what we're getting to. Is you're going to be able to open up Ableton on your little cellular device.
I think that's good, especially for people who are just constantly making music, and sometimes you're not able to carry your laptop or whatever wherever you're at. So I think for those musicians who are just all about it all the time, they can do it on their phone. I think that would be a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could totally see our friend Ashton just making music on his phone all day.
Yeah. Ashton was actually, I think, one of the reasons that I got involved with you guys was I don't really remember what we were talking about, but me and him had connected on Facebook, and somehow it came up to apply to the website. So here we are.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super grateful as well because we use your music for a lot of stuff, and I think I was really excited to be able to interview you when you agreed. I was pretty stoked. So always grateful to have musicians and be able to get their story.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be interviewed.
Definitely. So would you like to introduce a song that we can play for everybody?
We could play Signals, which is basically, Signals was the first track that ever got completed between the three of us, Infinite Brothers. Signals is an Infinite Brothers track. And it definitely jump-started our whole project because once we had listened back to the final version of this song, we were all kind of blown away individually. So we just decided, after hearing it, this is worth pursuing. There's going to be some magic here.
Perfect. Well, go ahead and we'll play the song. This is Signals by Infinite Brothers. And that was Signals by Infinite Brothers. And I want to thank you, Cody Sparks, for being here on Bring Me Life Radio and bringing this music with you.
Yes, glad to be here.
Definitely. So why is music such an important platform for you to express yourself?
It's kind of hard to explain. I mean, I think for a lot of people, music just kind of comes as like a natural way of expression, kind of, the same way somebody can pick up a paintbrush and just let something come out. I think for me, it was like when I first started getting into music and songwriting, it was like the first time I could sort of convey what I was feeling, because, I had definitely, taken art classes and stuff, when I was in school, but, never was huge on drawing. Never got very good at it. I don't have like the steadiest hand, but with like rhythm and drums, that's always been like a great way for me to relieve stress and things like that. So I think music, songwriting, producing has kind of, it definitely helps me like release things that maybe, positive or negative emotions, I think it's a great way to let emotions out. And a lot of times when I make a song, I can kind of look back at it and think of exactly, at that time in my life, what I was feeling and, what I was doing. And a lot of it has to do with memory. And that's why music is so beautiful, because it's just a captured moment in time, and it's just going to be there, and you can listen to it over and over and be reminded of the experiences that you've had along your journey. And that's that's why I love music.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. Just in general, being able to express yourself, I think is, it's a great way to release some things that we as humans might hold on to. And then when people put emotion into their music, you can feel it. For example, Adele, how she's a very emotional singer, and you can totally feel it when she's singing. And I think that's why she's so popular, is because she actually like creates that emotional music. But I think music is such an important aspect of life for everybody, and so it's important for musicians and producers to create that. And I think what you're doing is great, so I'm very thankful.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so many different, ways that it can be perceived by people. Music can be used as a way to, help your emotions kind of figure themselves out, or, deal with stress, but they can also just be ways to dance and move and in that kind of expression too. And, I think it's nice to be able to, at this day and age, like, you can always have an audience, there's, no matter like what you're making, there's always going to be somebody who's listening and going, this is, important to me. And I think that's been, that's definitely something that keeps me going, as many other musicians too, is just when you get that feedback from, just a random listener, even if it's, only 10 people have listened to your song, if somebody has commented on your SoundCloud that, oh my God, this song is so beautiful, thank you. That is in itself is like enough. For me, it's not really about how many plays. It's just about, has this touched somebody in a way that it has touched me when I created it. So
definitely, that should encourage anybody who's listening to anything. Even just a simple comment can make the artist's day, can make the musician's day. So if you're looking to help support them, even just by saying, this is a great song, I love it, or it's really helping me in my life, that's a great way to give back.
Yeah. Well, and it really ties into Infinite Brothers, because, essentially that's how that project started. I was on SoundCloud and I was looking at like a friend of mine. His name was Daniel. He had hooked me up with The Adaptive's music page, and I was like, wow, this stuff is really nice. And had played it a bunch that week and was playing it on my way to work. And I ended up just, leaving a comment on one of his tracks. I was like, wow, this is really cool, or something along those lines, really, a casual comment, and didn't really think much of it. And then a couple days later, I had a comment from him back on one of my songs, like, if you want any guitar in this, let me know. And that's kind of where the project started from. And then Jacob as well at Stratosphere, I've met him on SoundCloud too. So it's really it's crazy because we've taken that project from, 3 guys in 3 totally separate places in the U.S. and worked together online to like eventually meet up this past year and play a show together. And it's been a really amazing journey. So yeah, SoundCloud is awesome. There's some people who don't like it so much these days, and I can kind of understand why, but it's definitely opened up a lot of doors for me.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And so maybe that would be some good advice for other musicians who are looking to collaborate, is just commenting on other musicians' stuff, saying you like it.
Yeah, don't be afraid to reach out, because it's just so important. Because you can hope that your favorite artist is going to listen to your song, but if you're not going to reach out to them, then they're not going to find it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And so with that, we definitely have at least 3 more songs. Would you like to pick another one to play?
Yeah, we could do one off my solo stuff. What was it? Let's do Arrival.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Did you want to introduce the song before we play it?
This song, this is quite not too many years ago, but maybe 2 to 3 years ago I made that song. Definitely one of the strongest, I feel, tracks on my last release, Gradients. And it's just like it's got this, definitely got a somewhat of a dark vibe to it, but very relaxing and lots of water sounds and stuff. So yeah.
Excellent. This is Arrival by Cody Sparks. Okay, that song was Arrival by Cody Sparks, who we have here with us right now. Hello, Cody.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for being here and being with us. We greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So, would you say that your spirituality affects your music in any type of way?
You know, I definitely, it's definitely impacted it. I would say definitely some of my earlier stuff was definitely more. I don't know. I don't want to say I was tapping into, some being or whatever, but I guess just more along the lines of like meditation and things like that. One of my first albums, Chromatic. At that time, I was doing a lot of meditation and going to a lot of really awesome festivals with tons of workshops like that, and kind of experimenting with my spirituality. So I guess in a way, yeah. And I mean, music in itself, you could almost consider a part of the spiritual human experience, because it's really unique in what it is to us. It's hard to know if animals appreciate music as much as we do, but I think it's something that's like very unique to us, and it can impact you in many ways. So, yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a part of my initial process. It's there's a lot more brain power than spiritual power that I have to use, but I think it definitely, like, after listening to some of my songs, I can kind of think, wow, where did this come from? What compelled me to like make this song and be so like impacted by it? Because, especially with Infinite Brothers, it's been really cool to get a song back from Jacob and Shane, and, like listen to it and be like totally blown away. And, at one point there was, I think it was Signals, when the first time I listened to it, I had kind of had tears in my eyes, because it was just like, this is so beautiful. So in a way, yeah, spirituality definitely connects with my music, but I wouldn't say that, it has, you have to be a spiritual person to listen to this, or you have to think about spirituality when you listen to it. It can be just about, sounding good.
Definitely. One thing that came up while you were talking about all that is when you mentioned you're not sure about animals, how much they like music or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I remember when we had Jacob Askus on for the podcast. This is a radio, but we had him on for the podcast, and he talked about being at an event, and he wanted to make like a set for nature, which I thought was pretty cool. So he wanted to like dedicate some of the set to the nature spirits.
Yeah, I think that there is definitely a world that we are we just don't understand it. And I think what Jacob was doing, I think that's really cool. Like, to especially trees. Like, I think trees they're a lot more ancient than we are, and I don't think we really quite understand. Like, we understand what they are, but on a deeper level, do we really understand like what they mean for, this living planet? And vibration, that's all music is. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but if you're in a very nice wood building, music tends to sound just a lot better, just because it reverberates and vibrates and at a certain frequency. And I love that. Jacob is always doing really awesome stuff like that.
Yeah, he is, definitely. Would you say you have a favorite part of being a musician, or some of the more favorite parts about it?
Favorite part? It's hard to say. I think, I haven't been playing out as much recently. I've basically just been trying to do more production stuff at home. I think that I got a lot out of performing, but I also got out a lot out of just making music and, sharing it with people. And I think that's like the ultimate, goal of every musician is to share it with people and receive back the love that you put into it. So I think I kind of got on a tangent there. I can't remember what you asked me.
What are some of your favorite parts about being a musician?
Right. Just, hearing about your music from other people. I think, like when I've created a song, I, work on it for a long time, and then, eventually you're mixing it and all that, and you kind of start to, you've listened to it too many times, and you still think it sounds good, but you're like, I'm not sure how cool this sounds. And I think to have someone be able to listen to it fresh and go, oh my God, this is so cool, or this is, this makes me feel this emotion. It's really awesome to see that happen, because I think for a lot of musicians, I'm sure a lot of us deal with self-doubt and, not feeling like we're up to par on our musicianship. But that's why it's so important to have people in your life that, will support you and listen to music and tell you good things about it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It's, it's one thing to form your own opinions about your music, but then to have another person listen to it and tell you what they think, it's a completely different thing.
Right.
Do you have what are some of the more difficult parts about being a musician?
I think I could definitely, this past winter or so, creating music was definitely a little difficult for me, just because there's some days that you have some time and you're like, okay, today I'm going to write a song, and you sit down and you've got your cup of coffee or you got your cup of tea and you're ready to make something, and then 40 minutes later you really haven't got anything, and you kind of feel discouraged, and you're like, you know what, it's not working out today. And sometimes you can have these blocks of creativity where something just doesn't come out the right way that you want it to, and I think that can be pretty difficult. It can be discouraging, but the important thing is to just if that's happening, kind of release, put down your if you're using production, put down your production tools, or if you're a guitarist, put down your guitar, do something else, or remember what makes you inspired, because that's it's going to a music festival or something like that. It's something that can greatly inspire somebody. I know that when I've gone to music festivals in the past and seen really talented producers playing on stage and coming home after a weekend of that being like, wow, I'm filled with so much inspiration. Mm-hmm. That's where you can liven up your inspiration a little bit. But I think that's probably, for me, that's the most difficult part about being a musician, is the creative blocks and the frustration that follows that. But in the end, it's always able to work through. And then when you do have that breakthrough of, you sit down and you make a song and it's like, yes, something finally came and it's awesome, and it's a good accomplishment.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I've been reading a lot recently about perseverance and just continuing to stick with it, because that the people who stick with it are the ones who make a difference. They're the ones who see success and all that. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, it really, for me, when I was going to my first music festivals, and at that point I had just started to really get into making music, and I guess I was thinking, like, gosh, what's stopping me from being here and playing at these festivals? But I had to kind of take a step back and, be more humble, because I was realizing, wow, these guys that I've been listening to, they're not, they're not my age. They've been doing this for, 10, 15 years or so. And, as me as a beginner at that point was, I kind of had to be like, okay, just because I make music doesn't mean that I'm that good or whatever. You have to put the time in and the effort in, but it's always good to remember that, you know, you can always start somewhere. It's never too late to pick up, producing or something like that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Cool. So we have a few more songs that we can play, and would you like to pick another one?
Let's do Beatbox Love. This is an unreleased track from Infinite Brothers. Eventually it's going to go on our new album. Don't have a release date for that yet, but we're working really hard. We're working hard on making new tracks. So this is a semi-new one. It's just unreleased. So there's a lot of sounds from my own mouth in there. Hence the name Beatbox. And it has definitely a very good lovey, warm hug kind of vibe. So yeah.
Cool. Let's check it out. This is Beatbox Love by the Infinite Brothers. That was Beatbox Love by the Infinite Brothers, and we have Cody Sparks here, who's one of the three members of that. Welcome back, Cody.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome. And so we're coming to the last round of questions. So do you have any advice for any up and coming musicians or producers?
I guess, my only advice would be to just don't expect success to happen overnight. It's you got to work for everything that you're going to receive. You got to put in all the, if you want love, you're going to have to put in the love to be able to receive it back. And at the same time, keep a positive outlook about your music and reach out to people. One of the best ways to move up in the musician world is just connect with other musicians and people who love music, and that will get you so far, so much farther than trying to just stay in your own lane and do your own thing, all by yourself. It's other people can help you further your path more than maybe some people are aware of. Friends are important.
Definitely. I totally agree. A lot of us, have to learn the lesson that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to have, people around you who are willing to do that.
Yeah, it's okay to be the beginner. It's okay to be somebody who's not experienced, because I definitely don't consider myself an expert. I'm still learning things every day. But yeah, it's important to stay humble and learn from others. Definitely take every opportunity that you can to learn from somebody who may have more experience than you do.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. What are your plans for the rest of the year, or just as far as you know?
As far as I know right now, not sure if we have any shows planned. I don't have any kind of tour planned or anything right now. Just gonna work through probably the rest of the Infinite Brothers album, get that released. I'm not really sure. I want to say maybe late summer, early September kind of stuff. All depends on how fast we can bust out some of these tracks, but I think that's the main focus right now. But hopefully we're looking to do an Infinite Brothers tour at some point. Again, kind of still a floating idea at this point. So nothing set in stone yet, but we're going to be working on a new album, so keep an eye out for that.
Cool, definitely. And we'll make sure to play, all that, the whole album. One day we'll play the whole album.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Where can people find more information about you and the Infinite Brothers?
You can find me, Cody Sparks, on Facebook. On Facebook under Cody Sparks Music, and I'm at SoundCloud. Same thing, it's just Cody Sparks. You can find Infinite Brothers on SoundCloud. We also are on Bandcamp. If you go to theadaptive.net, you can download all of our music, as well as all of Shane Cote's music, and then as well as Jacob. I'm sure many of your listeners already know his music, but his music is on SoundCloud as well. So we're all on SoundCloud and Bandcamp and Facebook, so feel free to connect with us and we'll connect back.
Brilliant. And thank you so much for that. So before we get off, I always like to do this with the musician at the end of the interview. Could you just say, this is Cody Sparks, and you're listening to Bring Me to Life Radio?
Sure. This is Cody Sparks, and you're listening to Bring Me to Life Radio.
Sweet. Thank you so much for that, Cody.
No problem.
Well, I appreciate you being here. We do have one last song that we'll end the interview with, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here, taking the time to do this interview, and for allowing us to play your music for everybody.
Absolutely, man. It's been awesome to talk with you, and hopefully we'll be talking again soon.
Definitely. So could you introduce our last song for everybody?
Yep, this is Highline. This is a song off of Gradients, and it's kind of just a more chill out kind of hip hop kind of vibe. Nice, easy listening. So hope you guys enjoy.